You see the countdown on yours? Okay, cool. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's Just Be You with Charles Clevenger. I'm here with Chris Hosfels, a retired colonel. Um, I put it in the description. He's a Ranger Tab, infantry officer, full-bird colonel, commander of No Slack Battalion. The list goes on and on. Jumpmaster, Purple Heart recipient, you name it. He is a certified hero. He doesn't like to be called that, but he is. We're just here talking about his life and his story this far. He's currently works in the robotics lab at University of Texas. He's a consultant, military, does some military stuff with that. We'll talk about that later. But welcome, Chris.
Hey, Charles. It's great to be here. It's a little bit disarming, but okay. We're ready to go after it.
Hey, we're just being honest here, and I think, like I said, we all have a story, and we don't find our story that significant, but others do. So we're our biggest enemy sometimes when it comes to that. But um, so we'll start off at the beginning, Chris. I knew you lived in as a kid. You were raised in Washington State. Can you tell us about that? Your kind of childhood upbringing?
So yeah, the interesting thing is, so right, my dad was a Seattle police officer, but he was a Air Force brat. Grew up in the Air Force. Um, I had an uncle, my mom's brother, that deployed to Vietnam in the Navy as a supply officer. Um, my dad's family, uh, lots of Air Force. And so, kind of growing up, there was kind of that aura of service is important,
Right.
but never pushed in any way, shape, or form. Um, and I'm going to go ahead and air out all my dirty laundry. I did all the things that were not really popular for a boy growing up. Uh, I sang in a choir,
Okay.
a boys' choir. I
Hey,
did
talented.
gymnastics.
You're Renaissance man. Come on.
I did gymnastics, men's gymnastics, but I also played. I played soccer. I played basketball. I played baseball. Was actually doing pretty good at baseball, and it kind of came down to a choice of um, baseball or gymnastics. Um, and I decided on gymnastics, which doesn't make you really popular with all the girls and everything else in high school. Um, but because of those things, it really kind of made an impression on me that it's kind of the idea of duty, right? So there's service and then there's duty, which someone defined for me is doing the right thing even when no one's looking. And so that's sometimes even the unpopular thing.
Absolutely.
And so I think kind of the gymnastics kind of hit on that initially, because I was doing something that not everyone thought was popular, but I thought it was right. um, that actually got me to go to I got recruited to go to West Point. I did that for a year and a half. I got injured.
Okay.
um, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, although you say I'm really intelligent. But when it comes to math and science and physics and all that other stuff, spending a week in the hospital, you start failing every single class because it's you know a high STEM environment. So I basically kind of decided to leave, and I went to Washington State University. And what was kind of awesome is, and I think it is a theme to my life, is as I was leaving, they make you do counseling. And there was a great officer, infantry officer, who had been to Washington State University for his grad school, that did kind of the out processing counseling. And we spent probably a good 2 hours talking, and they really only have to do about 15 minutes. And at the end, he's like, I still think you'd be a great officer. Do you want me to call the PMS at Washington State University? And it really took me back, because I was not sure if that's what I wanted to do. And they were like, I don't care why you're leaving, but if you're willing to give us everything you got, um, we'd love to have you. And then I went to Washington State University, and just found some great opportunities, some really good cadre that just really cared about you and your growth. Um, I had no idea. I wasn't on scholarship. I didn't know how I was going to pay. My parents hadn't saved up because I went off to West Point.
Right, right.
So I enlisted in the Guard
Yeah.
as an infantryman. I went off to Benning School for Boys and, became an 11 Charlie and a mortarman. My drill sergeant became the CENTCOM Command Sergeant Major Chris Greca.
Oh, I know Chris Greca. I've met him a few times.
Right. So what's awesome is I bet, right. So he was the 10th Mountain Sergeant Major when we ripped with them.
Okay, gotcha.
So I actually got to see him from the time that I was PFC Hosfeld all the way up through Colonel Hosfeld. And, that just made an impression on me. And somehow I managed to get commissioned. I became an infantry officer and didn't turn back.
No, that's everybody's path is a little different, right? There's not a linear path to the top.
And it was full of failures.
Right.
Right. I wasn't doing what was popular. I failed. Right. I thought, West Point was the thing for me, and I didn't graduate. So I thought I was a failure. I had to change colleges, all the things that you think, that linear path.
I think that builds resilience, right?
Yes.
Things not going your way.
God has a sense of humor.
I mean,
but God has His own, and He's gonna put you on it where the way you need to be, and He may laugh at your plan.
Right. I've heard that saying, right? So so we'll kind of paint a big picture, broad strokes. Give me one thing. How many years did you serve?
27.
27 years. What's one of your most memorable? And I'm going to take it back to when you were a young officer. What's one of the most memorable experiences you had that helped shape you as a leader and as a colonel that you can always go back and kind of think about and relate to?
It was, I'm going to say two things. And one was pre-commissioning. So as a senior, I got the opportunity to do a thing with a bunch of other seniors. And it was just before getting commissioned. And there was a whole bunch of infantry officer, soon to be infantry officers with, a general officer and a couple of colonels and some majors that were like talking to you about being in the infantry. And they kind of started going around the group and saying, where are you going? What unit? And, kind of what's your goal? And I listened to all these lieutenants and I listened to all these people saying, I'm going to go to this unit. I'm going to go to the 82nd so I can do this. And then I'm going to go to the 101st and, all this, very detailed plans for their life so that they could be a general officer of so-and-so, like literally. And I'm like, when it got to me, what I realized I really wanted to say was, sure, I'm honored to be an infantry officer. And if I can look at myself in the mirror every day and say, I enjoy what I'm doing and I'm making a difference, I'm going to stay in. And when I don't feel I'm making a difference, when I don't enjoy it, that's the time for me to leave. And the feedback that I got from these very high-ranking officers of that's the right attitude.
Right.
Because the Army is going to change what it needs and where it wants to go, really made an impact on me that, okay, as long as I have a passion for what I'm doing, it's going to rub off. It's going to rub off on soldiers. It's going to rub off on those that I'm around. And that's going to give me a passion to do what I'm doing. And then the second thing is literally, I got done with PT the very first day with my platoon as an infantry officer, right? And you go out, and of course, what are they trying to do? They're trying to break me off.
No, absolutely. Yep. New
right?
LT.
I'm a new lieutenant. I'm in Hawaii. and we run all over the place, and we run further and harder than I'd run in a while because I'd just come out of Ranger school. But I ran, and we got done with PT, and the platoon sergeant said, "Sir, I want you to I want you to address the platoon." My platoon sergeant had not prepared me that he was going to do that at the end.
Right. He's putting you on the spot.
He put me on the spot to see who I was. And when I got out there and I looked at them, and I looked at the soldiers, I realized brevity was going to be the key, so that they wouldn't see me, shaking from the hard run and all the other stuff.
Right. Yeah, got to be hard. Let's go.
Right. And I said, the Army has invested about a year in training me to be able to take and lead this platoon, but it's your job to teach me how to be the platoon leader you've always wanted. And that's all I've got for you. Platoon sergeant, take charge of the platoon. And I walked to the back. Now, when I got home, I think I threw up from that PT, but after going in before PT to afterwards, I saw a difference in the way the soldiers looked at me,
Right.
the way my NCOs looked at me, and it made a really big difference to me, that I was able to kind of, look back on that. Everyone has you have expectations. You had expectations of your officers, your NCOs,
Right.
whether they were above you or below you, and putting that out there, that having expectations is okay, but letting people know what your expectations of them is really actually kind of important.
Right. No, absolutely. It's expectation management. And I always say, my thing is when I was in a leadership position, which is, most of our careers, I realized every morning I thought the only reason why I have a job is because of the people I lead, the soldiers I lead. So I just went in the day with that, right? That's why I have a job, is for them.
Yeah.
That servant attitude, not that I'm the leader, I'm the boss, and that ego trip. No. The reason why I'm here is because of you guys. So yeah.
Not to say that it doesn't happen, that it doesn't get you in trouble when it does happen, but trying to keep that forefront is really important.
So going back, right? So you retired full-bird colonel, ranger, jump master, commander, No Slack Battalion, which is one of the most storied, battalions with a just crazy lineage. What advice would you give to someone considering joining the military now, in our day and age?
Ooh, I've actually had this conversation recently. My daughter's fiance is considering, the military has put in for an OCS packet in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And the real thing that I think is kind of the most important is figuring out why you're going to do it.
Right.
If it's about the paycheck, if it's about the opportunity for school, if it's the opportunity, if it's for the sick TDY, or, because you want to go live in Europe for a couple of years or whatever, that's not good enough.
Right.
It may be good enough to get you interested, but you have to have something beyond that.
Right.
Because even if someone's going to only do it for 3 years, it's got to mean something to them. It can't be a miserable experience. It's got to be, if they're passionate about it, if they're passionate about doing their best, whether they're the best plumber in the Army,
Yeah,
electrician in the Navy, mechanic in the Air Force, whatever, or infantryman in the Marine Corps, guardian in the Space Force,
right.
satellites, whatever. You got to do it with passion.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably the recruiting slogan when you joined. I know when I joined, it was "Be all you can be."
Yeah. They're going back to it.
Right. That's what got me. I just want to get out of the house, but I was like, "Be all you can be." Hey, that got me.
That really is right. And what I think is actually good that they're going back to it, and they're rebranding it a little bit, right? but in any of those services, that you can be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I think the Army or the military gives you a framework and gives you tools to do that, right?
Absolutely. And that's what kept me in. That's what kept me
Yeah,
in for
absolutely.
27 years.
Yeah, it's what kept me in as well. Absolutely. So you served in both combat and non-combat roles. What do you believe are some of the biggest misconceptions that people outside the military have towards the military?
I think that's honestly probably the toughest question, right? The misconceptions is that it's either all combat or it's stripes,
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Something in between, right?
right? And it swings between the two, potentially even in a year or even in a month, right? You may be stripes, some crazy weirdness, um, to then Saving Private Ryan moment. Um, and I think the greatest misconception is that the biggest, the toughest in training is the biggest and toughest in combat. Because I remember even, first live fire exercise stuff. Some of the people who, walk around with the biggest chest out, um, get wild eyed and go, "We're in the wrong spot. Oh my God." And my favorite story is of the 19-year-old PFC, the very first night we're in combat, who is actually specialist, um, who's been in the army maybe 6 months, is the RTO for the platoon leader, and is the coolest guy in the entire company on the radio.
He had the did he have the podcast voice, the low deep voice on the radio, and
No, I mean he was 19 years old,
just
right?
yeah,
And
cool, calm, collected.
like literally the first day that we're in charge of the AO, we have a set of raids going on. We're doing 2 of 11 with Special Operations Forces, and we breach on one of them. I'm on one of the objectives, and as soon as the people go through, it shots go off, and I'm freaking out. You know, I want to jump on the radio and start yelling, "What's going on? Report, report!" And luckily, phenomenal vehicle commander, and I realized from some training that I didn't need to jump on the radio right away. Um, and coolest, calmest, most collected person on the radio. Now I had the coolest call sign in the army. I was the Cobra commander. I was
Oh,
Cobra 6.
nice. Yeah,
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 Cobra 6. This is Cobra 36 Romeo. One enemy KIA. No friendly casualties. Continuing mission. Like in that tone.
yeah. Just business.
Just business. He had shown up a couple weeks before we had gone to JRTC. You know, did that, and we deployed.
Yeah,
And I think that's kind of the misconception is that everyone's crazy or everyone's whatever, and there is no one answer.
right. It's a snapshot of society. The army is, or the military is, right?
Absolutely.
From the best to the worst. Um, and I think, yeah, you can't put anybody in a box, right?
From the inner city kid who you know grows up really in the army. He didn't have something, and the others that came from some other background and needed something different, and they come together and they make each other better.
The total melting pot, right?
Absolutely.
No, that's yeah, it's those misconceptions are out there, the military, the army, because especially you serve during wartime, right? You think every veteran's crazy, they have PTSD, they're angry, they're this, they're that, and we're here to tell you these two veterans were both combat veterans, served many years, we're both sane individuals that do well for themselves in the civilian life.
I keep my crazy well bottled up. Right? 3 years and 9 months. 3 years
right.
and 9 months of combat.
Jeez.
Uh,
Yeah.
I was mentioning that to get to deal with some various different service ROTC cadets, and that blew their mind. Um, that amount, that is longer than some served in World War II.
Yeah.
Um, and to your point, about the PTSD thing, I will be the first to admit I've got some, absolutely. I don't think anyone who has ever deployed and done anything of that level of stress in any of the jobs deployed doesn't have some form of PTSD. It's how well you utilize the tools that either you're given, um, that from childhood, that you've learned in the service, outreach, whatever, is how you're able to deal with it. And it's okay to not be okay,
Right.
because there was a period of time I was not okay. I'll be the first to admit that.
And I think, it's, I think there's a lot of civilians, right? They never served in the military, but they grew up, or they've been through traumatic events, and they have a form of PTSD as well. Um,
Mhm.
and so they're never, people like that are never kind of put in a box that they're crazy, but military for some reason are. And what I don't like, I see a lot of times, is military vets. They're stuck in their veteran mode, and they use that as an excuse of why they're not doing well, right, in the civilian life.
Or someone has pigeonholed them and told them that they're
Right,
only able to have that as their label.
right.
Um,
It's all about your mindset. You have to get your mindset right, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Um, I was lucky, and we'll talk about your transition out of the military, but I was lucky transition out of the military. I had good mentors along the way that kind of got me out of that mindset, right? Or told me not to get in that mindset, kind of, briefed me and told me the way to transition. Um, I think going to this, you're commander of No Slack Battalion, which is the 101st Battalion, storied battalion, crazy lineage. It's as an officer in the Army, that's one of the, as a lieutenant colonel in the Army, as a battalion commander in the Army, that's one of the like battalions you want to kind of check the box, stamp your ticket to possibly GO, right? Especially to oh 06 to Colonel. Before that, when I met you, you were the CHOPS, which is the current operations of the 82nd Airborne Division. We deployed to Afghanistan. You were in charge of all the operations in Afghan or in southern Afghanistan at the time. So these super, I guess, jobs, these super kind of just high demand, high requirements, um, these super stressful jobs, and just what did you take from these jobs, that you helped you in your further career and also helped you transition into the civilian life? Like what kind of either whether it be leadership, whether it be whatever it is, what did you take from these jobs that kind of helped you transition?
Prioritization and communication, and in particular, communicating what are the priorities. Um, I think those were the two things from those incredibly right. So every job that I had deployed was incredibly stressful. Company commander, battalion and brigade operations officer, the division chief of current operations, and a battalion commander. Right, low stress jobs in and of themselves. But I think the difference between good units and great units, good organizations outside of the military and great organizations outside of the military, is how leaders are able to communicate what's really important and sometimes tell you, this is the stuff I'm willing to accept some risk on. We're not going to care about that one. We're really going to care about this. Um, those, I think, are huge things that allow you to be successful both in the military but outside. And that's really hard for a lot of civilians because they've never had to really prioritize something that could mean life or death or whatever. It just puts it all in perspective how quickly we have had to process the risks, what should be the priority, and then communicate it so that people can accomplish something that really means something. That's what I think a lot of the civilian market really looks to the military when they come in and they see people doing that. That's why military people, if they find what they really want to do when they transition out, make them so successful in those jobs.
Right.
Because that's not something it's discussed in an MBA program. It's talked about, but until you've had that crucible of having to make those sorts of decisions and really prioritize and at times making the wrong decision,
Right.
you know, it makes, hey, don't worry about that report today. I actually need you to do, although you think this may not be as important, the why behind this is actually far more important than that budget spreadsheet today.
Right.
And that's what I think really helps the military out in the civilian world when you're able to transition, not put yourself in the exact framework and say everything is life or death, but being able to use that as a framework, right? And the fact that 9 times out of 10, most of the decisions that you're making, especially as a leader, right? When you become a non-commissioned officer or officer, is that it's about the decisions you make impact other people, not just
Right.
yourself.
Right.
And the fact that that's one of those very first lenses that you look through when making that prioritization, that's not taught in the most business schools.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Prioritization. The, you know, there's a lot of veterans struggling out there, right? And for whatever reason, they were successful in the military. They're having trouble finding their footing in the civilian world. But there's so many lessons that, like you just kind of ironed out, that we took from the military that easily transitioned to the civilian world. They're different terms, but it's the same stuff. And one thing I learned, and I'm in real estate, we get coaching and all this stuff. But these top coaches that we pay good money to get coached by say the same stuff that the military taught me, right? And I'm like, you guys are wasting your, like, hey, my boss is wasting his money,
Right.
because one of the renowned coaches is Tom Ferry. He coaches us, and he's like, pick two things, just prior. He doesn't say prioritization. He said, pick two things, get good at it, accomplish it, and then pick two more things. But you know, drown out, silence everything else. Just pick two things. But that's just prioritization. That's what we did in the military. Same stuff, different words, same stuff. And for whatever reason, I think if veterans can kind of see that, they can do better. And it's just from words. That's all.
Yeah,
Same stuff.
right. It's the different words, but if you can pair that with whatever you're passionate about, whatever really makes you excited. I don't care if it's how you iron clothes or or selling real estate.
Right.
Is if you're passionate about it and you can prioritize, you're going to get the important things done, and people are going to recognize your passion for getting those right, those the important things done. The money will flow, the accolades
Right.
will flow, whatever else that makes it important to you.
Right. And that's it. And I always say this. I say, these military guys that retired, right? They got to the top and they retired. What they did in the military, they worked harder than everybody else. They took the hard jobs. They did them. They did them well. If they just do the same stuff on the civilian side, they are going to kill it. Me and you are living proof of that, right? You just gotta humble yourself, and those are the things you have to do. So hopefully this message reaches somebody out there, a veteran out there that's kind of struggling or trying to find their way in the civilian life. We're living examples of that.
Hopefully.
Yes, it's for now. Success stories for now, right? Success is earned every day. So,
Yes.
so you currently work in the University of Texas, UT, right? Robotics Center. Um,
Mm, not necessarily just the robotics center.
okay, explain.
So, for all the military people that watch this, I am reconnaissance.
Okay,
I am go out, confirm or deny, make contact, and keep contact with people, primarily to help the University of Texas answer the major challenges that the Department of Defense is having through research.
okay,
So, my job is part interpretation because of all my military background, my 27 years of experiences teaching at the Army War College, is to take that and translate that to incredibly smart PhD researchers who are at the cutting edge of their fields from across the university. And if they're interested in supporting the Department of Defense, help them better understand what the challenges the department is really focused on answering. So, a large profile started actually in the robotics, and so that's why a lot of what we do. Our office is actually in the Robotics Center of Excellence, but we're actually situated right in between the College of Natural Sciences. So by synthetic biology, physics, chemistry, computer science, and all the engineerings, mechanical, architectural, aerospace, electrical. That's where our office kind of sits. And my job is to help them understand it and then help them communicate what they're trying to solve in terms that the Army's going to understand
gotcha,
or the military.
gotcha.
So I help them with trying to write grants to actually solve the problems that the military is saying, this is what I want solved over the next, this is the problem that we're saying is a priority to be solved, that over the next 3 years or so, we want you to provide us an answer.
So you're a high-paid interpreter.
Absolutely.
That's
But
funny.
I'm also working on telling the story of both the Army to the professors and also from what they're doing to the
Right.
military, highlighting stuff that is going on that isn't related to the military, but then telling the military that this is what's going on, and all of a sudden they go, "Why don't we know about that?"
Right.
Um,
Because
and then
I can see these professors getting stuck in their cubicle, right, and not seeing that big picture of, and same with the army, right? These whoever in the army, military, these officers, whoever in the army, not seeing the big picture that the university is working on,
right,
and
and
vice
so
versa.
it's trying to connect that academics, industry, and the military so that the innovations can go faster. And so my job is also to help them actually write and create tools so that it's easier for them. As you know, the military is the largest bureaucracy in the
Absolutely,
world.
absolutely,
They
absolutely.
don't, they don't want to deal with that.
Nope.
So I try to help them, much like you help someone, purchase a great home. I want the military to purchase the best research,
Gotcha.
right? So it's about writing the terms, making it so that both sides are saying, yes, this is what the deliverables are, the timeline for the deliverables, that sort of stuff, which gets down to, can I understand? Can I prioritize? Can I communicate? Right? The
Right.
stuff that we are just talking about.
And I see that now that you say it, I see it like your fiduciary is obviously University of Texas, the one that pays your
Mhm.
pays your salary, right? But also your heart's still with the military, still in the army. So you're kind of your fiduciaries still with the military. You don't want the military to overpay or get something they don't need or whatever the case is. So you're kind of that broker, that middleman, right?
Yes,
To try to make both sides happy.
for me, I feel like I'm still serving. I'm about trying to find the best research, the best researchers to answer really tough questions that might give our country an advantage.
Right.
And, you know, kind of going back to the theme of, the passion and service, um, my passion is really learning. I love learning about my soldiers. I love learning new ways of doing stuff. I love watching them learn how to do new tasks. Um, Being around PhDs that are the top of their game and going, what if we is actually really exciting.
Right.
It's really kind of cool. And the fact that they're trying to do it for the Department of Defense, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, whatever, or Space Force, is really an awesome thing to translate years of service and say, wow, I'm still serving,
Right.
but
You're
in a
still making a
different way.
difference, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So now, obviously unclassified level. What? Name one cool thing that in the UT robotics lab. To my listeners out there and viewers, me and my daughter luckily got a tour, uh, from Chris about a month ago. But name like one thing that's like really cool. That's like, you think that will really help the military out, going forward. That's probably 1 to 5 years away from actually happening. What's something out there that's kind of cooking that really kind of blows your mind and really you think can really help the military?
So from a military perspective, how do we build trust in units? Right? You watch them do the thing that you've asked them to do, and they do it with repetition, and they do it really well,
Okay,
right? And they do it, it's like jump master school, right? Once you become a jump master,
I
okay,
failed, but thanks.
you can do all your stuff. You can, but you get in the aircraft, doing it daytime, doing it at nighttime, or doing expert medical stuff, you know, putting an IV in the daytime is not the same as doing an IV at night under nods,
That's correct. Anything done at night's going to be a different thing,
right?
a whole different ball of wax.
So, but the only way you do that is through repetition and then seeing said private specialist NCO actually do it
Right.
and
It's
do
got to
it
be muscle memory. Where you don't think about it, you just do it. Right.
right. Well, how do you do that for a robot?
Shit, I don't know. You tell me.
That's what's really cool is they're actually doing that, like the equivalent of an EFMB lane or a sticks lane or a live fire for anyone who's in the military, right? You do it at day before, you do it blank, you do it live, daytime, you do it at night blank, you do it at night live. They're going to do that with robots
Okay.
to help build the trust in the system that it can do like reconnaissance tasks.
No matter
That's
what the situation, daytime, nighttime, rainy
right.
weather, snowing, desert, it doesn't matter. They're doing the same tasks and being
40,
successful at it.
40 minutes a day for 40 days, regardless of what the weather conditions are. That builds trust in that system.
Right.
And that's right. To me, that's really cool.
So
That's
you know
really
that
cool
system's not going to fail. Right.
that the system's not going to fail.
Trust.
It's not just the 5 minute, demonstration in front of a general officer. This is a test that can survive the conditions that we, the military, would expect. And then everything from medical to AI stuff, it's all out there. It's
Right.
all being worked on. Hypersonic stuff, um, low Earth orbiting satellite stuff, new communication models. It's out there. The boundaries are being pushed in a way that makes me excited. That makes me go, ooh, I wish I would have had that at any one of the levels that I served in combat.
Right. Right.
So,
No,
you
that's good
explain
stuff.
that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And my experience of robotics basically is Chat GPT. So um, which still blows my mind to this day. I get on there, I'm like, holy. And if that's available to me, to Charles here, here in San Antonio, Texas, on the World Wide Webs, man, imagine what's behind the scenes, right?
And what can we push it to do?
Right. Yeah, because what's available to the public is very rudimentary to what's actually out there right now, like what they're working on. So
Potentially.
yeah,
But what I think is really exciting is how do you take that and put it with something else? That
okay,
integration, that's really kind of pushing the boundaries because whoever did Chat GPT, right, wrote it and created the algorithms and
right. It's just a
all the
bunch
other
of
stuff
data,
that I don't
basically.
understand. But how do you put it with decision making? How do you put it with cars, with sustainment, with life saving stuff?
Right,
What if you could have an app that tells you how, like, everyone could have an app on their phone, super first aid, like EMS for dummies,
right.
and
Hey,
said, it takes the picture and says, that's what, the big problem is. The person's going to bleed out because the car crash that you walked up on. Here's how to do a tourniquet. It has a little video of a tourniquet.
right.
That's, Chat GPT, but with you know, in a context of medical.
Right, on steroids, right? So yeah,
Yeah. To me,
yeah,
that's where we're going.
absolutely. I think and it's people are kind of I think me and you, we're all about it, but a lot of people are scared because it's going to take away some people's jobs, right? Um, but I think we just have to evolve, right? We just have to evolve and I think we will naturally evolve just as human race. If our jobs become extinct, i.e., Amazon, right? Amazon put a lot of people out of business, but we evolve.
I think you bring up a really interesting point. How do we do all of it within values?
Okay.
Um, right? Yes, it may replace someone who's doing beating the hammer on a nail, as said thing comes through assembly line. But there are still the people who have unique skills. The one welder that knows how to be able to do that one really finite thing, um, that's not going to go away. That's
Right.
not going to be able to go to a robot. Um, I think the question is are we, society, the US, etc., our values of, are we just going to let them go away, or are we going to be able to invest in them and say, your passion was this, there's a new way of doing that?
Right. And I think as humans, I think humans, as far as just in our DNA, we adapt, right? We
Yes.
adapt and overcome. We have to, or we're going to die. It's just the human genome. So yeah, absolutely. But a lot of people, like, I think a lot of people that are closed-minded or just operate in a framework that's very kind of pigeonholed to them. They get scared, right? Because these
I've
robots
only
can do
done
their
it this
job
way.
now.
I've only done it this way. Those people.
Right. Like, okay, cool. Robots can do this now. What can I do different? Right. What can I improve on? How can I improve my foxhole, right? To
Yeah.
make myself more marketable and better. So, like I said, we always, and it's a military term, always improve your foxhole, right? No matter
Yeah.
what.
So I had a great friend. He was a fellow battalion commander. He refused to call it a foxhole because he said that that was too defensive of a mindset.
Okay.
He said, I'm always going to improve my fighting position.
Okay.
Doesn't that sound a little bit more like aggressive stance to it.
It does, right? It's kind of semantics, right? But it's to the person that really doesn't know.
The
It
person outside the
sounds
military, they're going to go
sounds a little extra
foxhole.
juicy, a little extra spicy, right?
Yeah, but for us for anyone in the military or who has served in the military, I'm gonna change my I'm not gonna go foxhole that I'm waiting for them. I'm in my fighting position. I'm ready. I'm
Gotcha. No, I like it. Yeah, I like
That's
it.
what stuck with me.
Yeah.
Go Joe Halloran, great guy.
Oh, that's no, yeah. I'm actually going to use that, man. I'm going to steal that and use it going forward because I always say always improve my foxhole, but I'm talking from the damn was it Cold War era when we actually used to dig foxholes with our damn
Well,
entrenching tool.
anyone in the Ukraine is going to tell you digging in is required.
Right. Yeah. No, that's not a battle I want to be a part of, man. That's no bueno. Um, so you had how long have you been retired now, sir? And I call
So
you sir still. It's a bad habit. I'm sorry, Chris.
um, so I formally retired on the 1st of October. But what I did is I graduated a class on the 10th of June from the Army War College. Um, did my retirement ceremony the same day,
Okay.
and I started work at University of Texas on the 6th of July. So although I was technically, going right back into work,
Yep.
um, it gave me a great opportunity um, to really land on my feet.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I think what you're kind of hinting at is, how did I prepare for that transition? I think
No,
that
I was actually going the other way. Like since you're still, you haven't been retired for that long. I've been retired for about 4 years now. So, um, and I'll be honest, when I retired, I closed that chapter. I don't want nothing to do with the military. Uh, but since you're newly retired, what if you could be commander of the universe for one day? What do you see as challenges that the military has? And if you could wave your magic wand as commander of the universe, like what changes would you make going forward to as you see military now? Because I read the news reports. Obviously they have a hard time recruiting because of our economy.
Mhm.
Um, there's jobs. Americans aren't hurting for jobs, so they're not joining the military. And I kind of follow this. The recruitment efforts for the military ebbs and flows with the economy. Um, but that's just one. That's just one issue. That's just one kind of challenge that they have. But what do you see going forward? The military has as a challenge, and what do you think you could, if you were commander of the universe, what would you implement? What would you change to kind of, go forward?
the I think it goes to the earlier conversation where we said, we both kind of came in at the, be all you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is putting that at the earliest stages of our education. That, and I would put it just somewhat differently for those like in elementary school. Um, that you could be so much more, which I think is a slight nuance on be all you could be, because so many people feel that they're pigeonholed by whatever label, that their limits are already set for them. That's what I would change. So I would say no.
Right.
You can always be something more. And I think the implied part of that is serving something bigger than you allows you to be something more. Whether it's serving in your community, whether it's your local community, volunteering to pick up trash on the highway, from the
Right.
lowest level,
Just being part of something that's bigger than you, just you.
something that's bigger than you,
Right.
right? helping with an after school program, helping coach soccer, just being there to cheer on. You don't have to coach, just going and cheering your local soccer game. That makes the kids feel better.
Right.
I think that that's the one thing. If my magic wand, that's what I would impart is that kind of message. If you can be something more, and if part of that is serving something bigger than you, which I think it should be,
Right.
I think overall, one, it would change national service as the perception of national service,
Right.
whether it's Peace, I don't care, Peace Corps, any of the services, um, serving in your community, whatever. I think that would help bridge that small problem that we have with recruiting people to serve,
Right.
because so much is I'm I'm not going to use the any of the inflammatory word, but individualism is great. It's phenomenal to recognize you are an individual, but serving something more, there's just something about it. It's like Christmas, right? It's about giving the gift
Right.
rather than receiving.
Absolutely. No, I think you hit the nail on the head because it's funny. We're from the same generation, so the generation before us looked at our generation as like these new kids. They're not the same. They're this, they're that, and that's how I think our generation is looking at this next generation. Right, but
Every
we're still humans. We're
generation
still the
says that
same.
about us.
Right. So we're still the same, right? So I think it's as far as the recruitment efforts. I think that's a great message to try to get across, right? Be a part of something bigger than you, and it's
Anything.
hard to explain. You can't really kind of it's not a tangible thing I can give somebody. It's something you feel inside, right?
And until they've done it and felt that,
Right.
you know, um,
Where I think is people that have like we talked about earlier, people that have been involved in sports, being part of a team, they felt that, right? Being
mhm.
a part of a team, accomplish something as a team. But a lot of individualism, right? People stuck on their phones, people stuck on whatever it is they're today's day and age is, they have never felt that accomplishment as a team, so they don't get it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really very interesting point. There are team sports that are still made up of individuals. Track, archery,
Golf,
uh,
right? Golf is all
golf.
individual, right?
It's an individual, but your overall contribution to the team makes the team win.
Absolutely.
I think that that's actually, that's the same thing. Chess clubs, whatever. And even today, I'll even go as far as, kind of the Xbox games, or the people who are doing the gaming online. Most of them are not an individual one. They're still part of a team,
Okay.
so they're still craving it.
Right.
We're just giving it to them in a new way. And if we don't, to our point earlier, I think if we don't adjust how we message that,
Right. You got to
and
convey it.
and use that as the initial hook, and say you're already part of a team. Now let's get out and do something about that team. I don't know.
No,
I throw that out there to the masses to consider.
no, it's a great point. Great, no, great discussion. I think even that message, even like from what we were talking about earlier, the veterans that are struggling with their transition, that being part of a team, right? Like, listen, man, you do that in the civilian world, you get part of a team. It's a little different, bit different, but you're still part of a team. If you're a team player, man, you will go far. Like
Mhm.
you will crush it. You will
Yeah.
crush it. Um, so no, great points. So what I'm gonna ask you this: um, what is the you transition successfully, right? You set yourself up transition successfully. Outside looking in, you probably don't think, you probably think you could do it better, right? Because we're all our own worst judge. Um, but what's a couple of things that you did to set yourself up when you knew you were about to retire, you knew you were about to transition to the civilian world? I have my key points that I always preach. I always preach to my veterans, that you have to do. But what are some key points that set you up for success in the civilian world? Because I know you. I originally knew you like, this is just being honest. I knew you as Colonel Hospitals, Major Hospitals. No bullshit. I was still kind of had a healthy fear of you, right, from our 82nd days. And we talked about this,
Yep.
off camera, off podcast. Um, and then when I met you, civilian side, or transition side, it was a different Chris Hospitals. I kind of saw that a little bit, but it was a different Chris Hospitals, and you did that successfully, right? Because we all have our roles to play. But I think a lot of veterans struggle with that, right? How did we transition? So if you give any veterans out there transitioning or about to transition some kind of tips on what you did that was successful for you.
Think about it before it's forced upon you. That was the first. As soon as there was even the inkling that, right when I hit 20 and I could retire, I knew that my time in the military was less than I had left,
Right.
that I had given. And so, um, in that realization, which is very stark, and many of us have joked about in the military, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Right. Right.
Um, I chose my last job in the Army to help me figure that out.
Smart.
And so I chose to go to the Army War College, knowing I wasn't going to be a general officer. And specifically, what was awesome about that job is I was still amongst up and coming, hungry lieutenant colonels and colonels that are, you know, making that one of two of the three very selective criteria, right? You commanded a battalion in '05 command. Um, you got selected to a senior service college, and then there's the brigade command list, right?
Right.
They're in the second one.
Gotcha.
They're doing that. So I'm still around people who are really passionate about what they do. Um,
It wasn't retirement mode, right?
but it wasn't retirement mode because of them. And everyone that I was serving with on faculty was 50% military, 50% civilian.
Okay.
In that, in the fact that only one day a week we were wearing a uniform, it put me, and everyone is on a first name basis.
Right.
It started putting me in a mindset of what I'm still doing can be very, very important, can be very passionate about, but I don't have to be pomp and circumstance. I don't have to be the persona of all the badges and tabs and everything else that I have
Right.
on the uniform.
Right. You kind of peeling back the layers, right? And you can
And
kind
it
of
was a
drop that
slow peel
pretense.
back rather than that rip of the band-aid that a lot of veterans end up doing because they don't think about their transition until the last minute.
Right.
And in that first year, I got some great advice. Um, young Lieutenant Hosfeld served with a major who was the battalion executive officer, was on faculty as a civilian.
Oh
And he
wow.
said,
Okay.
there are three things that you have to think about. And you've probably heard these, right? Location, vocation, and compensation.
Yep.
Where are you going to do it? What are you going to be doing? And how much do you want to be paid for it? And he said, you got to pick one. If you get two, count yourself lucky. If you get all three, you are in a phenomenal position that not everyone gets to do. And if you don't have the conversation about which one of those three needs to be most important to you and your spouse, my phenomenal wife, Tina, that you've met.
No, yeah, we haven't hit on personal stuff.
We haven't hit on the personal stuff yet. It allowed us to start having that conversation. What's most important? What's most important to us?
It goes back to that prioritization, right?
And it allowed us to prioritize which one of those. And I am one of the incredibly lucky ones, because what I started doing is I started doing reconnaissance. I'm going to use an Army term. I started looking at the areas. I started looking at housing. I started looking at what jobs are available in the fields that were somewhat of interest to me. And my wife and I had multiple conversations about what was going to be the most important to us.
Right.
And we went with location. Then we went with what I was doing, because we figured if I was happy with what I was doing, I was going to be happy at home.
Absolutely.
Happy where we were at. And the last was compensation. And I was just lucky enough to find something that hit all three.
No, that's awesome. I remember you hit me up about, I don't know what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like, hey, I'm thinking about retiring out here in a hill country area. Haven't got a job lined up yet. Don't have really nothing lined up yet. However, I might want to buy a house out there. So can you take care of me?
Yes, because it was about being in a place that my wife and I, what are the things that we wanted? Where did we want to be? And that then allowed me to be able to narrow down, okay, what are the potential jobs that I could do? Okay,
right.
What's of interest? And an incredibly supportive spouse who said, I don't care if you're a barista as long as you're the best barista that you want to be.
Absolutely.
That's,
yeah.
And that level of support helped ease that transition along.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, it's, the support element as far as, and we haven't touched on that personal element, right? The support element that we all have, whether it be a spouse, whether it be children, whether it be mother,
Extended
father, whatever the
family,
case
mom,
is.
dad, sisters, brothers.
Right. And there's a cliche out there that says, behind every great man behind every good man is a great woman, and behind every great woman is a good man. And I truly believe that, right? We're not in this battle, we're not in this life by ourselves. And I think that, our spouse or whoever we chose to be with, whether, whatever it is, um, makes us whole and levels us up in life, right? And we got to find that person who levels us up. Now, Chris, you hit a home run because I think you've been married. I don't know how
Hurried
many
up.
years. Yeah, you hit a home run. You've been married. I ain't gonna tell you how many times I've been divorced, right? But you've hit a home run, right? You married, been married for a long time. Tina is your wife, lovely lady, love her to death. Such a sweetheart. I don't know how she picked you. Um, you're a fucking savage, but I don't know, right? She's awesome. I got to meet her and through this whole process of you buying a home with me. But yeah, it's so important, man. And if you want to touch on that, Chris.
I will. Um, it, I was lucky enough to marry someone who absolutely became my best friend. She wasn't my best friend before. Um, we've known each other since 8th grade. Yeah.
Wow.
I had to go away to college and come back for her to really notice me and say, okay, he's kind of a good guy.
He's a stud, right? Yeah.
Right in my sophomore year. But having a foundation of knowing each other and not dating, and then dating and very quickly realizing this is one that I did not want to let get away, and then getting engaged and then getting married. I did the whole cliche thing of an army officer of graduating, one Friday and Saturday,
Got
and
married that weekend, huh?
and the next weekend getting married. Um, and
Tricare and BAH. Gotcha.
and she had no idea about the military.
Right.
She really didn't. And then thrusting her into spouses clubs, wives, coffees, all those
Right.
sorts of things. And the fact that she stayed with me, um, and she kind of, and what was very interesting is she kind of, Western Washington is very much a very liberal, very different. I was very conservative. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to serve. That was very different from people in my high school.
Right.
I was interested in politics. I was interested in the military, not normal for my crowd. Um, and when we started dating, she's going to hate that I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. She did the whole "if we don't have a military, we won't have wars."
Right. Absolutely.
Uh,
Keeps us in business, man. Shit.
well, well, yeah, but and we go, "Are you kidding me?" The Bible tells us, there's been violence, right, for a long time. Um, but I knew I had a keeper when we were in Hawaii, you know, and she was having to drive down to Honolulu from Schofield Barracks, and she was driving out during PT times, and she told me that night, I saw this person falling out of a foot march and someone else having to carry their rucksack. Don't they know if they fall out, they're going to be killed in combat? And I was like, oh, she's a
She gets it.
keeper.
She gets it.
She
Yeah.
gets it. Um, and she saved my life more times than I can count, by just finding someone you can talk
Right.
um, to tell all the things that we do, the stupid things we do, the great things we do, the scary things we do, and not judging you
Right.
in
That's
that.
super important. It's like a
Wow,
built-in counselor at home.
absolutely. And that she hasn't looked at me differently. She may
Right.
have, um, but allowed me to be able to do that is a phenomenal thing. So
No, that's
yeah,
awesome. No, that's awesome. And
and she raised two incredible daughters in the meantime while I was deployed.
yeah, it's a tough business, and it's something that I don't think our spouses know what they actually sign up for. I know
Mhm.
mine didn't because they're not my spouses anymore. Constant deployments and just craziness, and it's a testament to you and your wife and your marriage that you guys are still together, and she stayed with you this whole crazy time of 3 years, and I don't know how many months you said you've been
3 years and
in
9 months.
9 months in combat. It's insane.
I,
um,
I think you just made me think about something that I think is important. Is we marriage vows and everything else, you say I will forsake you, amongst all others, but we in the military did. We put the service, the nation, an
yeah,
ideal, a
it comes
value.
first. Don't get it
We put that
twisted. It
first,
comes first sometimes.
and the fact that they, in the case of mine, um, understood that's as you can attest,
Huge.
is a little bit rare, but is when you find that
It's
that's gold.
huge. Absolutely. It's huge because we have no choice, right? Like the job, what we do comes first. It just is what it is.
Well, we have a choice, but
Oh,
we
we
put
do.
that first.
Right.
We put that first,
Absolutely.
and they don't have to accept that.
We have a choice to serve. Absolutely.
And
Yep.
but when they accept that, they accept that you're willing to do that. That's special.
Absolutely. No, it's great. And, I'm hit on one other subject you kind of brought up, and then we'll close it out. Um, you brought up politics, right? Conservative, Washington State, very liberal area.
Hmm.
Um, I would personally, I was raised very conservative. My old man, retired Air Force, um, super conservative, church going people, ultra conservative. I was raised that way. As I've gotten older, I've gotten pretty liberal. Like I always tell myself I'm a liberal Texan, but I'm conservative Californian, right? Uh,
Okay.
I'm sort of in the middle somewhere, but as my local Texans would call me, I'm the lib on the street, which I'm okay with that, right? I think that we have a lot more in common than we have differences, and I think that the media definitely highlights and pushes towards the divisiveness, of people that just think different than the other than their neighbor. But being like, how did you see that? Like, how did you coming up from you're a conservative in a very liberal area, joining the military? What kind of shaped you in being that conservative? And did you being because what kind of shaped me is being more of liberal and being more what they call liberal, but I think I'm more worldly. Is I see different cultures, I see different people, I see different things than just what my parents and my upbringing showed me. So it kind of opened my mind to different experiences and different ways of life. And so, what just talk about your experience and kind of how you've grown. Because I think you're in Austin, right? Keep Austin is very liberal. It's the liberal part of Texas. It's Austin is keep Austin weird, right? Um, so talk about that for a second.
So um, I'll go back to the kind of one of the first statements. I was a bit of an oddball. Fifth and sixth grade was Reagan Dukakis,
I remember Reagan Dukakis. Yep.
right? I followed the news. I read the newspaper. That's what I did as a kid. Um, I was interested in why, what each of them were saying, etc. And so I think that shaped me overall. That there, I am right of center. I'm not going to put myself in conservative. I'm not going to put myself in liberal. I'm somewhat right of center in the fact that a lot of social things, I'm more on the liberal side. But
Right.
when it comes to my identity, what I think should come first is national level problems of security. What is our nation supposed to provide? Um, which sometimes comes at odds with some of the liberal ideas, and I'm okay with that. And because I did my undergrad is in political science, I did a master's in national security studies, I did a master's in liberal arts, which kind of combined some military, some history, and political science. Um, I take a very worldly view on all of those things. I want, from a very, very strict political science, liberalistic view, which is I want nations to get along together, and the more that we're intertwined, you know, from community all the way up through national, the less likely we're able to have wars
Right.
and conflict. The more we
Me and
work
you both
together,
know
the
we
better,
don't want wars, right? We
right?
we want peace.
the more we work together, the better off the world is.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I'm a realist, and that's not the way a lot of people think.
Right.
And I would prefer to put some safeguards in place so that we can have that blending. And I prefer, that's kind of why I like Austin and Central Texas, is it's a great blending of both of those things together. They
Right.
keep Austin weird. Every one of your metropolitan areas are generally more liberal in skew. Well,
Absolutely.
the country, and rural side is far more conservative in values, church, etc. I tend to go that way, in my viewpoint. But I acknowledge and want that discussion
Right.
of both sides, and that's where I think, the politics, um, in order to be a good candidate for any party, you have to be the best, most ironclad version of whatever that is.
Right.
And anything that says that you're not reduces your chance of electability within your party, let
Yeah.
alone. And the problem is that what I see as a challenge for our nation is that compromise is seen as weakness rather than for the greater good
Absolutely.
in a discussion of conflicting ideas and
Right.
finding what are the common threads between any one of those.
No, absolutely. And I think, you're right. The two-party system has kind of failed us, right? If you're a Republican, you're going to vote whoever's a Republican. If you're a Democrat, you're going to, and if you say anything that's on the other side, you're a traitor, you're weak, you're this, you're that, right?
The
Like let's open up for discussion, have healthy discussion about stuff.
I have no problem with the two-party thing, but it's the party infighting that keeps them from being willing to say, I'm willing to step more closer to the middle between the two.
Right.
That's what I have
Absolutely.
the problem with.
No,
And if we
absolutely.
can find how, I don't know what caused that. That's the part that whatever that root cause of that problem is, if we can get after that say compromise is actually good because because there is no one party that owns the right, being the right answer, the truth.
That's correct, right? And you look at our, you know, you look at you look at the presidency, right? It always swings left and right. It always swings left and right. You got
It's a
right,
pendulum
you got left. It's a pendulum, right? But no one owns the truth, like you said, and the truth somewhere, always somewhere in the middle.
in the middle,
Right.
which is why we go from one party to another and we go back and forth. And that's okay because invariably that middle is where we end up because
Yep.
you can't govern without acknowledging what the other side says.
No, absolutely. And I think it's just keeping that open mind where, like, okay, I don't agree with this other side, but I understand. I understand where they're coming from, what they're saying,
Powerful
and they
words.
have a valid point.
I hear what you're saying. I acknowledge your viewpoint. I don't What we both want in the end is the same thing. We
Yeah,
want
absolutely.
our
We just want to
country,
go about it different
our
ways.
people to be better. We just slightly disagree on how we're going to get there.
Absolutely.
It's
And
right
I
back
think
to your discussion.
absolutely. I think if we realize that and we acknowledge that and we can move forward, I think the world would be a better place, or America would be a better place.
And I'm going to try to, um, you know, I did 3 years of teaching, so I got to bring it full circle, right?
Right.
Um, to your point of, veterans community, etc. We all came from so many different places, so many different viewpoints, but we all focused on an objective, a mission, a task that needed to be accomplished.
Right.
That's where I think veterans have such a unique position to offer to our country.
No, absolutely. Like
Within their
they can
business,
block out the noise and they can accomplish a mission.
they figure out how to make that happen.
Right.
They figure out how
Block
to
the noise, super
block the
focused, hyper focused. Let's
find
go.
the team, find the right team, find the right people, find the right people with the right talents. They don't care who. They generally don't care who gets the credit. They just want it done.
Right.
They want it done right the first time. That's where I think, if we're able to rally any of them to be able to bring that mindset to anything, that's
No,
that's an awesome thing.
absolutely, absolutely. And we'll close with this, Chris. Your next chapter. I know you, right? You're always improving your fighting position, right? You're just not content at UT doing robotic stuff, right? Well, what's your next chapter look like? What are some goals you have? And I know service to community, service to others is very important to you. But what are your kind of short term, long term goals?
It's service,
Okay,
service, and continuing to learn. So, um, and the occasional drink of bourbon. Um,
absolutely.
my what makes me tick is learning. That helps me feel young. Um, I think UT's my next chapter because I'm surrounded by people who really care about what they're doing. They want to be at the top of their game. It forces me to bring my A game every day.
Right,
Um, the fact that I'm able to serve professors, their students, I'm able to get students basically scholarships, grants that cover their tuition. Um, I'm getting ready to go on a staff ride with the Army ROTC um, to Normandy. A little bit of bringing the 508th and the 80s, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, the 2nd Battalion of 327th Infantry, what they did in Normandy to these
right.
students. That's still service. That's what my next chapter is. Um,
Just
um,
giving back, right? Just make an impression.
because it makes me be able to say, oh, I hate saying this. My 50th birthday is coming up the end of April, right? And you ask yourself, did I make a difference? I know my military service did. I want my second chapter to be able to say the same thing. I made a difference.
Absolutely.
In a cadet, a professor to push the boundaries for our military, for our nation. That's what brings me joy. That's my passion. And as
No,
as,
that's
as
important,
long
right?
as long as I'm able to wake up in the morning and look at myself and say, man, I get to go be around some really smart cats today
Right.
and help them do what they do, I'm going to
No,
keep doing it because I love it so far.
absolutely. And iron sharpens iron. I always say the three people that we surround ourselves with, our three most closest people that we have, that's who we will become,
Hmm.
right? And
These are really
that's
smart cats. So they got a long way to bring me up to the smart level, but
yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same. Um, no, it was a pleasure, Chris. I thank you for your time. It was great talking to you. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you for your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. And the goal of this is just that hopefully it helps out one person. If it can help out one person, we did our job. If you can take one nugget from this, we did our job. So I appreciate it, Chris. Any last words that you have before we go ahead and conclude this?
um, I feel blessed. I feel blessed to have known you in our time in the 82nd. Um, the fact that we've been able to come together here in Central Texas, um, that
Small
I
world,
mean
right?
right? That's the great thing of the military. And being able to connect with someone, you don't need a VFW, you don't need a American Legion, a battle buddy that's out there that you can just talk to, have a great conversation like this, is awesome. And I appreciate what you're doing, because you're still serving. You
I,
served me in finding me a great house, so I appreciate
I try, brother. I try, man.
it.
No, I appreciate you, Chris, and thanks for everything. And no, for all my viewers and listeners out there, thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time. Be good to yourself, and we'll talk to you later. All right.
Cheers, brother.